Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. This is the first episode of a new series, the Recruitment Business Owners. And my guest today is Alex Rawlings, founder of Raw Selection. Alex launched Raw Selection in 2017, a specialist executive search business that he works with private equity firms and their portfolio companies across Europe and North America. Alex has also publicly documented the real journey of scaling Raw Selection towards its next big milestone of 10 million, which he's very bravely put out there on YouTube. The wins, the losses and all. Alex, welcome to the series.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh.
My pleasure. So I've known you for 13 years, but for those who have crossed your path, who are you and what are you building?
I think you covered some of it on there, but yeah, obviously just from our perspective, it's a bit of a history. Started from recruitment, accidentally kind of fell into it like most people. Got a role doing dental recruitment where I did 10 placements and didn't even hit 10 grand in 1 month. I then progressed through to working for a job that I absolutely hated from day one within recruitment, and then managed to stay there for 2.5 years or something similar to that effect, which was, looking back, was a bit ridiculous, but I was that scared of making a move. I actually considered leaving recruitment even though I loved it. But the atmosphere, environment, etc., was just horrendous. That business pretty much no longer exists. Okay. And then I went to another recruitment business that taught me more kind of senior, and I've just kind of gone up with regards to seniority, and then wanted to break off on my own, wanted to prove to myself, do the right standards, do the right thing, as I put it, and grow and scale something and put my money where my mouth is. And yeah, we're 8 and a bit years later, we're still going.
Share why you are documenting this journey to 10 million, because it's a behind the scenes take on what you're doing, which is brave, putting it out there.
So, I mean, purely a brand play. We've got to be aware. Our prospects have to be aware. We've got to kind of split. We're looking at the moment. So, 60% of the content's pointed at clients. 30% of the content's pointed at candidates, and then 10% of that is appointed at recruiters. So we basically are just purely wanting to grow our awareness of our brand, of our business, so that we can, when we're approaching particular prospects, yes, we've heard of you guys, we've seen this, we've seen that. When we eventually hire and go back on to hiring experienced recruiters, it will support us with that, with people that understand us and know what we're trying to be about. And obviously, same when we approach candidates, it doesn't look like a scam or something to that effect. It's real, and they feel honoured to be reached out to us and know who at least who the business is to some degree.
Good, love that. So in April of this year, you'll be 9 years into the business. Over this period of time, what have you found in building the business? What have you implemented that's made the biggest return on investment?
I think classic cliche answer, but people development. You know, most one area I've been frustrated at with regards to recruitment business I've worked in, they just haven't built the infrastructure well enough to actually allow people to develop and grow. It's been ad hoc, it's been, you know, ambiguous, it's been everybody does things differently. So the level of investment that we've had from day one with regards to, it originally still sat on Dropbox, we then, you know, a long time ago progressed that onto an LMS system, and then the constant training daily, the constant push for people to do self-development, you know, the investment in people like yourself, and the investment in me with working with non-executive directors and coaches, whether it be Tony Robbins coaching, whether it be experienced Ned from a business perspective in recruitment or outside of recruitment. That desire to be better is important for us, and has brought a significant amount of ROI for the business, and obviously for the people that work within it. That, coupled with the kind of seniority level that we play at with kind of CXO -1, again, well documented with regards to every firm and is an executive search firm nowadays. But for us, it's about really playing at that level, actually doing appointments at that level, and actually doing a really good job, rather than, you know, the 360 model, which I'm against for this seniority. I'm not against it, you know, more junior appointments, but certainly for if you want to call yourself an executive search firm, I don't believe you can do 360 and do an effective job, an opinion, which obviously is fair to be contested. The level of assessment and interviewing process, we regularly get those kind of feedbacks from candidates that we go into a level of depth and level of detail. We've got one of the guys, the longest research we've got in the business, and it's an interrogation for candidates to go through in a positive manner through Sean to really get into the detail and understand whether this person's good or not. And most firms in my opinion, don't go to that level of depth. Again, not probably speaking of the Shrek firms, although I don't know them particularly well, but that kind of belief with regards to process and system and taking people through. And the only way you can do that is you can try and hire from Shrek, but who would want to join us from Shrek based in Leeds when there is no Shrek firms in Leeds? So you have to train them from the ground up, which is predominantly what we've done by one person. And that's taking graduates and previously inexperienced non-graduates, but developing them through and taking them into producing high numbers and some high performance stuff, which we want to continue to do. And we're certainly not done with the numbers we've put up so far.
And hence the split within the model of the business where you have got the resourcing research team versus the BD team to be able to provide the quality of service.
I think you just wouldn't ask a manufacturing guy to make the product, sell the product, distribute the product, buy the supply chain. And I think we're seeing the professionalization of lots of different industries. We saw law firms go through that a very long time ago where it was just a lawyer, you spoke with them. Now they've got full infrastructure and process and associates running through and operations and marketing to try and grow them. We're starting to see more of that from a marketing perspective from the finance and accounting world, which has, historically been banned from doing such things, and we're now starting to see that in private equity, and we're now starting to see that in executive search, recruitment, where we're seeing operations, we're seeing marketing as a function. I think it's True Search that have got 3-4 marketing people. I think last time I checked, albeit it was a year ago. They're hundreds of people. Like, how are you getting the brand out? Obviously, they've done incredibly well. I'm not disputing that, but I think we're seeing more and more. Okay, we've now got a marketing team. We're now trying to grow. We're now starting to emulate some of the consulting businesses that the industry tries to position itself against, but poorly, and going through that professionalization as a back office process. And part of that is the delivery of executive top level talent. And if you're trying to sell 50% of your time or 30% of your time trying to sell, 30% of your time trying to manage accounts, 30% of your time trying to interview and assess candidates and source candidates, there's not a lot of time to do anything particularly well. So the more that we split that down and break that through, the more effective that I believe people can be.
Yeah, you touched earlier about the return on investment, which is the self-development of yourself and the team. What are you doing from your perspective in bringing your team further on from a development angle?
The answer to that is a lot. We've got obviously you in the business that comes in weekly to go through the core reviews, to go through the scripts, to go through the mindset, to develop our people and hold them partly accountable, but also to develop and improve them. We also have we've invested a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort into our LMS system. And I think, something we're recently doing at the moment is building our retainer pitch out, making it clear, making it transparent, making it so there's no ambiguity. We've worked this morning on the objections and trying to focus on the core key objections that we have and that we come across that actually clients sign on, and focus on training and developing our people so they can handle those 3, because then it increases our likelihood. I've never worked for a firm where there's a real clear retainer pitch process, and this is how you win work, and this is how you qualify a buyer, and this is how you then, understand their pain, their challenges, their issues, and then take that all the way through. From my perspective, I'm currently being coached and mentored by chief exec of Dartmouth Partners, 50 odd million in revenue, 300 plus employees, now 3-4 different brands within their business, to help me go along that journey. I've just signed up again for the second time for Tony Robbins coaching, and we've got, I've turned the camera around, we've just got tons of books, and we encourage our people to, when they get in as soon as they get in the office, read, consume, don't look at your emails, leave it all, just work on the constraint the constraint that you face right now that would bring the largest return on investment. So, and that's just a constant reminder for them to continue to work on that. And then myself or all the other managers in the team will also go through with people to do the training, to do the role play. We've got guys who do role plays on weekends. We've got guys that do role plays immediately we've done the training, and then we will also do that with them as well, or at least Mo and Halima will, to hold them to the highest standard, to improve things and to grow things. And some of that is documented in the episodes that we're doing, and there's I think there's quite a fair bit of the training that will be in there and has been in there already.
Yeah, you certainly have an impressive library there in the office, which I've been stealing from time to time.
It's only useful if you read it, and it's only useful if you use it, but we can all be collectors of books.
Yeah, collect dust. So this period of time, the 9 years, what would you say stretched you the most, and what has it forced you to change moving forwards?
I think last year was probably the bit that stretched us the most. Personally stretched me the most. I think we had lots of different moving parts and moving pieces happen in the business. We've got very clear on what we want to do, and in order to do that, you have to raise the standards, and that's incredibly difficult. We've had, like any business would do, with regards to churn and change of people. We've really built clarity over our associate program and how we develop grads through and take them through our business and increase the likelihood of success. And we feel that we're we're always the most confident, aren't we? But we're the most confident that that's going to receive the littlest amount of change. But that had to be tested and tried and process driven last year. We had lots of changes from internally from personnel as well in the business, of people been with us for a long time that transitioned out or transitioned into slightly different roles and other bits, and all of that brings disruption and challenge and new. But I think because we were working out what takes us to 10 rather than what takes us to 3 or whatever, you're working out those levels, and that's difficult on me. That's difficult on the team. That's difficult on the people that are here, that are not here. As you begin to constantly move those kind of levels where it was here and now you're asking for this, Alex, and the next day we're asking for this, and you've just got to try and get that as high as possible, that you're like, right, this is the standard that then will bring the return on investment, and you've got to test things as you go through it. So I'd say last year, I'm sure there's loads of answers of COVID and other bits and pieces. I think I was a bit naive going into COVID, to be fair, but fortunately rode that through with, it was a tough time for everybody. But I'd say that the constant change and the iterations that we're trying to go through as a business to get to the levels we've got to, I felt the most amount of change last year, and the standard being raised significantly last year, which hopefully will mean that this year we'll have some turmoil and stress and whatever else, but that will set as the standard of, okay, this is what good looks like, and this is what we need to do.
Okay, fab. If you had to explain what moves the needle in your business today, what would you point to?
I think process and accountability. We build the processes, and it's very simple, and we hold our people accountable to those processes, and we retain those standards. I think that's what's moving the needle now. I think prior, because everyone's going to go, well, that's bloody obvious. Prior was identifying what the metrics and what we needed to accomplish, and there's still elements of the business that we're still trying to do that. But once we identify what needs to be done, it's then around how do we execute that. The more you spend on what needs to be happened to be able to accomplish this amount of retainer pitches, what do we need to do this, what do we need, the more you spend on that, it's quite tiresome. But when you've got that and you have to go through it and you have to test and do, unfortunately, lots of things new usually, once you've got that level, we then go into that mode. So we're still trying to work that out in the business. There's areas of the business that don't work, and then as you scale, you then have to break those. You have to go back to everything and go, right, this doesn't work now. What do we need to do? How do we take retainer pitches from 15 a month to 30 a month, and retain our 1 in 3 pitch ratio? And then, at the moment, we're trying to blow those retainer pitches up, which means we know that we'll lose that pitch ratio. So we're trying to kind of counteract that a little bit, but you've got to do the volume before you put the quality in. So simple answer is process and accountability for that. And obviously that all centers around people. But if I answer that question with everything, then it'd just be the same answer for all your questions. So that gives you a bit more clarity, hopefully.
Yeah. Useful, thank you. If you were starting again tomorrow, what would you obsess over in year one, and what would you deliberately ignore?
Again, this is something I spoke about. Well, not if I start again, but it's something I mentioned in the episode that's just gone out. And for reference for anybody who doesn't know me, it's only just started this, so we're only at episode 3. I'm a big focus on kind of return on investment and what moves the needle the most, as your prior question answered. Ignoring the problems that just are not significant, that we get drawn into, that are emotional, that are not logical, that we're going to deal with that on this date, we're going to deal with this in the future, or something, hey, this is on fire. Well, it's not really, and I reference singeing the grass in the last episode, but we have to focus on the things that move the needle the most. And I think if I was to start again, the thing that I would obsess over would be our hiring strategy and the people that we brought into the business. And I would spend a lot more time on that, and not having paid down significant ignorance debt over the last 9 years. I'm not ashamed to tell you that I've only probably just worked out exactly what we need for the right person to increase the likelihood of success. And I measure intelligence by the speed of learning, so I've definitely not done too well on that front. But you want to give lots of different opportunities, chance. You want to force the growth, you want to change, you want to flex, you move your avatar, you go, well, we'll miss that red flag, we'll not do this. And that the A-player term is overused, right? But which we replace with top 10%, but we're genuinely building the picture of what that looks like, and for people to come into our business. And I would just obsess over what that looks like and the criteria that has to be met. And that's difficult when you're small, and if you're nobody, no team members, it's very hard to hire the best possible people, but it can be done and it can be achieved. You've just got to work hard at it to do so.
What mistake cost you the most, whether it be financially or emotionally?
I mean, lots of financial mistakes. Unfortunately, nothing particularly large. The one that comes to mind is I bought a load of power banks to put in boxes for clients that we'd send out, and realized that you need a license to send lithium-ion batteries abroad, or it takes you a lot of money. But I mean, that wasn't a big investment, I have to say. But you learn from everything from there. I think emotionally, for me, and it's something that I'm working on at the moment, is and kind of coming through a little bit. But the emotional element for me is wanting people to succeed more than they want to succeed, and when you put that level of pressure on yourself, it means that you hold on to people for too long. It means that you're invested in their growth more than they are. And, we've all been at a stage where we got something really quickly and we made success, but it's when things get really hard, and putting that pressure on yourself to get that person to the level that you need to get to. And there's just a lot of people who just don't want to do it. And that's absolutely fine. And nobody has to go for the stars and the skies and shoot the lights out. But I think that's probably the bit that's cost me the most of growing the business, has been, I want you to succeed more than you want to succeed. And I will do everything within my power to help you. But really, charity starts at home. They've got to help themselves. They've got to go away. If you're being the policeman for their performance, if you're being the policeman for their development, if you're all over the top of it every day to go, hey, have you done this? It's draining. And you just got to go sometimes, right, well, that person doesn't want that. And if that affects the business with its growth, then, they're not right for our organization. But, and we've all got bits that we need to improve, and there's bits we struggle with and bits that we don't get there with. But I think when I go down to my NED sessions and I'm not prepared, which never happens because I wouldn't let myself do that, but I've coached people both in the business and outside the business, and when they come into it and they don't know what they're going to do, and they don't know what they're going to talk about, they've taken no action and it's been a week. I've never understood that. It's like, if somebody gives you something, let's get to work on it. If that's the big problem, we've all agreed on it, then you just get it done. If someone sets you a 25 call dial, you do more than 25. You blow the lights out, and people have to help themselves. And I think I spent too much time trying to re-engineer things to allow people to underperform. And certainly something over of course, certainly the last 5 months, because that's an evolving project that you've got to go through, especially when you're raising the standards of the business consistently. But that is certainly something that I've personally been. That's probably held me back the most of what I can see at the moment. But I'm sure there's something else as well.
Okay, your current team managers are organically grown from rookie into moving up the career pathway. As they move into that management element, what leadership challenge surprised you the most once you started scaling those individuals?
I think that the hardest part, I mean, I don't want to speak for those guys of what that's been for them, but I think the hardest part for the process of managers is training them to the level that they need to have. And it's liken it to, there's a model with unconscious incompetence, and when we all sit in a car, we all think it's going to be easy, and then we try and work out how to not bunny hop when you pull the clutch out. Some people get it quicker than others, obviously, but the level of not knowing what it takes to be a good manager, this industry is renowned for dreadful leadership. People are in it for themselves, people who can't develop, can't improve. And I think that's one of the key things that we've got here is, and one of the reasons, anybody could work anywhere in the world and we could all get a little bit of a bump or a bit of a change or more, if you need it, work-life balance or whatever you want, right? But I think the investment that we put in our people and the standards that we keep raising them and keep asking them questions of themselves and keep pushing them in, rather than just going, oh, hey, yeah, you can be a manager and then it's done, right? That path for us as a manager is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly challenging. The expectation and the weight of their performance, and I'm not just talking about how much they bill, I'm talking about how they perform for their team, putting them first, the level of skill that they have to have with regards to mastery of our process, the EQ conversations that they have to have, the challenging conversations, the difficult discussions, and it's very easy to shy away. I remember when I was previous business and there was somebody in the business that wasn't hitting their call target, and I was a coward and I emailed my manager and I was like, oh, I'm about to go on a call. Can you just follow up? And I can't remember the lady's name, but can you just follow up with her and just make sure that she does a call target before the end of the day? And rightly so, that guy emailed me back and said, no, it's not my job. Because it's easy to avoid those difficult conversations. It's easy to go home. We don't even have them with our friends. We don't have them with ourselves. We don't have them with our partners. So that is incredibly difficult for a lot of people. And going through that, and then the whole rigmarole of the whole business is watching your standards, how you work, how you operate, and it puts a lot of pressure on people. So we put a lot of investment into our managers. I train them every day to help them with growth and development, and whether we're working on things in the business, we're working on how they're identifying constraints, what they're working on themselves, how they're approaching conversations. That it is an incredible amount of work that needs to be done. So for those that wish to be that, it's a huge sacrifice for to grow and to develop and be an effective manager, and everybody goes into it and goes, yeah, I'm going to be the different version of this. I won't be the person that makes a mess and treats some people like crap, but you probably will be, and you have to study the game. And it's the same as the salesperson who's been selling for 20 years and never read a sales book, and guarantee you're not that good at sales. You're either incredibly bright and you've really picked it up and you're in the 0.001% of the world. And I'm like, well, why are you in sales? Why are you not Elon Musk in it or Jeff Bezos in it or doing something valuable? Or actually you're probably just not that good. And you just think you're good and you're unconsciously incompetent. And when you come up against somebody who sells at a better level, then yeah, they can sell and they could go from cold to warm and build a market and build things properly. Whereas actually you're an order taker. And your clients come to you because your network and your connections and your contacts, whereas actually, yeah, you actually don't have the fundamentals. And it's the same from a leadership perspective. You don't just learn leadership by following Jack Welch on Twitter or LinkedIn. You have to study the game. You have to focus on guys like Drucker and Maslow's book on management. And you bring that into your game and you study it and you continue to improve. And then you go back over it because you're always making mistakes. It's like learning to ride a bike, but the bike just keeps changing how many wheels, the way that it operates, the way it runs. You have to keep redoing that process because it's always a different conversation. There's always a bigger team. There's always a bigger responsibility. There's a challenge you haven't come across. So I would say that's the hardest.
What is it that they want now versus, say, in the past?
If we just take things away from the simple basis of developing people into management, which we do poorly as an industry, and we emphasize that to the wrong people. There's a model I really like, actually. It's called thermostat thinking. And as people begin to progress and develop, what tends to happen is the thermostat, gets to a certain level. There's a level of comfort zone sits in. And again, I'll use my own story previously. And so when I joined prior business, I did 150 odd grand in the first 6 months, which was the most I'd ever built. I know I wasn't the superstar I should have been, but I then, for the next 6 months, which I'd done the hard work, I'd driven it, I'm not a slacker, but my mindset wasn't strong enough. I didn't go to 300. I finished on 200 and something. So it's raising that bar. Now, the challenge for me was that when I moved that job, I moved jobs, I moved house. I bought my first house. I can't remember the story, but like I had 1,500 quid saved for a rainy day. And my granddad, who's was an electrical engineer, came to the house to have a look. I was, oh, yeah. And just went, you're not living here until you've got the electrics fixed. And that was 1,400 and something quid. So I was like, right, brilliant. I've got no money. So I had to work hard, and you've got to. So the thing that a lot of high performance need is they need a reason, they need a stretch, they need pushing, and they need to identify when that thermostat's gone to settled and the ambient temperature, and how that's then raised and gone to go right. What do we need to do here? Now, a lot of that sits with goals, and we're obsessed with that within a business. Again, most businesses would claim that, but that for me is what high performers need. They need the minor tweaks. I joke about it a lot. Jack, who loves football in the business, talks about Pep Guardiola, and I've stolen his thing about those percentile changes. And there's a lot of that. And then there's understanding how to raise that bar. And there's lots of different ways to do that, to raise your bar and to raise your profile and go, okay, I'm going to go for X now. I'm going to go for Y now. And it's all circumstantial to the individual as to what they want, how they're wired, how they're built. And a lot of that comes whether you're security focused, you're risk focused. A lot of it comes from like the parenting that you've had. I don't mean whether it's good or bad. I just mean what type of profile is your parents? Are they big risk takers? Are they really security focused? Are we over leveraging with regards to cash? Are we looking at, the passive income streams, although most of that's bollocks, but are we looking at different investment vehicles? Are you pushing that out to move cash, so you're not sat there going, okay, I'm good? Can we put some little bit of stress on there to go, okay, I need to rebuild the pot because I'm invested in something that's gonna move forward? Now, I'm not giving financial investment advice, but that's certainly, that temperature gauge gets changed up, and that's what they need on top of, how do we sell bigger fees? How do we get to the number one fee number? How do we build £1 million thermostat thinking? How do you go from selling to small mid-cap firms to winning, 20 searches a year with Warburg Pincus? And that's the bigger challenge. But first usually has to come is the raising of the thermostat. You don't erase thermostat thinking, you just raise the standards that you behold for yourself.
I want to open up the questions to the audience.
Scenario at the moment where I've had a business for over 20 years, but I need to grow, and I never come across good enough people that I want to bring into the business, or they always tend to, I don't know, ghost or not perform or whatever it is. So I'd like to move into more permanent recruitment. But I mean, you said you've read a lot of books and Tony Robbins and all the rest of it. Where would you start if you were me?
So have you got people, Kate?
Yeah. They're not salespeople though.
Okay, so you basically, you are the fee earner, the breadwinner of the business.
The only option at the moment.
and everyone else is kind of feeding off you. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a really difficult process to go through. And the reason I'll give you the context as to why, because a lot of people will give you BS, and having interviewed a lot of experienced recruiters, most of them can't sell. when I went into private equity, I didn't know anybody in private equity. I wasn't even 100% clear before I'd done the research. And even then, I learned it along the way. I didn't know anybody in private equity. I hadn't placed a chief executive. My largest fee was, I don't know, 50 grand or something. So I had to build that from scratch. You've basically got two options. One is that you go out there and you try and hire somebody. The problem is that you won't know what good looks like from a sales process until you do that. You could bring a consultant in to go, can you help us with it? And go, this is what good looks like somebody like a Josh, to go, can you come along with a ride? The problem is you may not be able to get the volume. You may not be able to track the high performing salesperson. I struggle. And I, I'm not in the position that you're in. I still build, but not to, the business doesn't feed off me type thing. The second option you have, which is probably the option you're going to have to go down because you'll struggle to find the first, and I don't mean that as a personal attack on you, I just mean it's bloody hard, and if you work it out, then I'll pay you to tell me.
I've decided it's too hard.
So there's studying the game, and there's three books that I'd recommend to study and not to read anything further. The first one is Ryan Serhant, Sell It Like Serhant. He operates a bit like a workbook. The second is a lot of books, but it's everything from a sales basis that Grant Cardone has written. I was listening in Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. Getting into those and studying them and building the process and then build it internally. Those are three phenomenal salespeople. Now, from an online perspective, you've got Jordan Belfort sales process. You can buy his course. There's Alex Hormozy, he's phenomenal from a sales process. And you just got to crack building the reps and keep going through it. And the way that I've found, which is the way that a lot of firms, and I'm not going to compare myself to any of these guys, they're much larger, much more headcount growth, success, millions, tens of millions. I think some of them even go for the billions now. But if you go look at the guys like Faden, you look at guys like Storm, yes, they've scaled back. Yes, we could all make our egos better by telling them that, oh, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. But if you just look at the level of scale, they've predominantly scaled through grads. And the only way you do that is that you teach them how to sell, you teach them how to run a process, you teach them how to do recruitment, and you build an internal process that goes through it, and then you can go through the scaling process. But that's where I would probably say if you can do option one, it will accelerate things a lot quicker. But the problem being is that every single business in the world is looking for option one, and typically the guys that are coming out of from your rags to riches stories, your Alex Hormozys, your Patrick Bet-Davids, and the rest are all typically coming from sales. They're getting very good at sales and they're scaling business on the back of it and building that in through their business. And that's predominantly Ryan Serhant, sales, etc. So all these guys that we're kind of seeing, the future billionaires of the world, that's where they're coming from.
So I'm 8 months in. So I set up two businesses, a search firm and the real money spinner, which is sort of going into the offshore staffing world of providing South African offshore staff into the UK. I'm billing, I'm hands-on on both businesses. I've made my first hire. But I guess the question for you, 8 months in, I'm already feeling stretched. I'm very happy with momentum, but what is the one thing you think I should focus on that will disproportionately increase my chances of scaling in the next 12 to 24 months? If I could pick one thing, because I can't do everything.
That I can't answer that question on the basis of that question. I can answer that question if I ask a question. So I can give you the logic which will help you work it out, and then I'm happy to say it. And the reason I say that is because it depends on where your lever point is, depends on what you want to accomplish, it depends on your cash position, it depends on the person you just hired. It's got so many dependencies, right? And so I stole this from Alex Hormozy, and it's about focusing on the biggest constraint that moves the needle, that brings the largest return on investment. So private equity looks at metrics for everything. So in fact, my answer is going to be metrics, right? But private equity looks at metrics for everything. And if you've got metrics for numbers, and the guys that are in the business, certainly management team, will know this, is we go and we decide on what is the list of things that I could do and exhaust them, down to, if I got a better chair, right? And then you go, okay, the ideal scenario then is you go and you test the hypotheses against each of those, and you can basically guess which ones you think are going to move the needle, right? But you then test what's going to move the needle the most. for the top 10, and you keep looking back at the ratios, which is pretty much everyone's goal, is to increase revenue, which realistically it should be to increase profitability, but it depends what you're looking at, what you're trying to do. Again, shouldn't always actually be profitability, depends what you're trying to scale on. But you then look at, okay, if I achieve, Chris Williamson, if you achieve one thing in 2026 and you look back on 2026 and you've accomplished that one thing, what would it be that would be like, this would be amazing? Whatever that is, work it back, the re-engineering type process, and then go, right, what are the blockers that are preventing me from hitting those things? And then you work it through. One of the big things we've worked on is metrics. And we now know what each person needs to do in our organization to achieve the numbers that we want them to achieve, down to a T, and not measuring candidate interviews, because there's no correlation between how many candidates they interview and how many things. We measure a level of business development call, but that's a very early metric number, right? So you would then take them through the process and you identify what is the one thing. So for example, for us right now, the team is working on making that retainer pitch with no ambiguity, with a very clear process, because we know that the thing that moves the needle at the moment is keeping our 1 to 3, as we've done a lot of work on increasing it. We will then look to blow that out by increasing the retainer pitches again in probably, hopefully 6 months. And then we'll have to do that process again to clean it up, right? The second process that's going to drive all of that is we're going to write back to how many leads do we need to get. So if I know that I need loads and loads of leads coming into our business, which meant I've got somebody in the business in marketing that's their job is lead generation, and their goal, albeit we haven't accomplished it yet, but we will, is to get to 100 leads generated per month from them. And I know that if we generate 100 leads, that spits out a number of booked in calls, that will then spit out a number of retainer pitches, which will turn into a number of retainers signed. So then you can measure via numbers, and then you can get into the quality. So the answer is depending on what you want to do. I'm going to guess, Dan, obviously you've just spoken before, your aim is going to increase your revenue and put more cash on the board.
Yeah.
Then you need to understand what moves that.
It's about, like you say, moving the needle. And I think one of the things I took from that response there is about removing the blockers. And I think that's key, because business owners get in their own way, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things. Again, it would be circumstantial position, but your goal will be to be off the tools. You need enough cash in the business that will give you a significant runway, and that is measured by you. Most recruitment firms are around 1 to 3 months. I think that's a really poor way of sleeping at night. So I'd go for higher, and then make sure that you then are building your program of how you're going to hire, develop, and bring your people through. Or if you go down the model, which I haven't been able to crack and happy for advice on, is the experience side and how you bring that through. Obviously, you've got your offshoring business and other bits, so it just depends on. You can leverage different things from different hiring processes for that into your recruitment business, no doubt. But certainly, it's all just very dependent. I'm very cautious about giving people advice when I don't know the information, because
it's the way your mind works. I like that, and I think it's good because you're prompting me to think in the right way. So thanks for that.
What are your thoughts on AI in recruitment, and how much do you truly think it'll affect us?
I mean, anything that gets answered at this point is just completely, obviously, opinion, but it is based on very limited facts. I think AI will, like the generic answer is AI will enable it. I suppose if I rephrase your question, be like, how much investment am I putting into artificial intelligence right at this point? It is very limited. Because the options to do things are very limited. The cost base is quite extensive, and it isn't that good. If you look at anything from a marketing perspective and a sales perspective, if it was really good now, then we'd already be cleaned out. Yeah. If there was I mean, Clay's not technically AI from my understanding, but things like Clay, things like Source Whale, right? Page, Hayes, all those guys will be cleaning up that market if they built it and it was really good. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that those programs aren't good and there's loads of people who've had success with it. I'm not saying that, right? What I'm saying is, from an AI perspective, is there the golden goose that chases the golden egg that solves your business and goes through it? The answer is there may be, and they're not keeping it for recruitment. because there's a very, very much more lucrative product, lucrative application that product would go into before it hits us. And then we'll be heavily disrupted. Will we get disrupted? Yes. Will it be like LinkedIn? Yes. Will it be like job boards? Yes. And it'd be like all those kind of areas. But my understanding at the moment is that don't feel that that's an avenue to go down. Yes, we use AI. We've got an AI resume audit editor. We've got other bits and pieces we use in the business. I built loads of ChatGPTs that accelerate speed, but a lot of the stuff at the moment is back office. A lot of the stuff at the moment is taking away friction. I would advise against, unless somebody else can say that they've done really well with it, I'd advise against going down the I've got an AI thing that can sell. You could go down the route of getting a third-party sales company to go out there and do business development for you, do email marketing and other bits. I know guys that have worked that really well. I haven't seen it worked really well at executive level, but I have certainly seen it work level at a more mid to senior and more junior appointments. Temp, I would guess it would probably work really well. So that would be potentially an option.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Alex, for being our first episode of the series of the Recruitment Business Owners. And we shall be here every Thursday at 1 p.m. And thank you very much for joining us.